Caitlin Clark takes an elbow, an eye poke, and then a full-on shove to the floor. Yet Marina Mabrey stayed in the game after only a technical. Hours later, the league quietly upgraded her foul to a flagrant 2. Now Mabrey is talking, and the timing looks suspicious with growing talk, sparked by a Wall Street Journal piece about whether Clark is facing unfair treatment in the league. Most people saw the shove. That's the clip that exploded online. But the chain of events that set it up actually started minutes earlier during the June 17th game, when J.C. Sheldon's hand raked across Caitlin Clark's face in the middle of a scramble for the ball. Clark wasn't out of position or making some reckless move. She was battling for possession exactly where you'd expect, when Sheldon's fingers caught her eye. The first sound from the crowd wasn't outrage. It was that sharp mix of gasps and low groans you hear when something looks like it could be serious. Officials were close to the play, and crew chief Ashley Gloss later explained their in-the-moment judgment before the sequence was reviewed. On replay, they ultimately upgraded Sheldon's foul to a flagrant 1, but that call came after the fact. In real time, the game rolled on. That sent an immediate message that the foul wasn't severe enough to stop play right then, even though fans courtside were already leaning forward, murmuring about what they'd just seen. Frame by frame, the broadcast told the story. Clark's head jerks slightly from the contact. She steps back, then straightens without any theatrics. No rolling around, no exaggerated reaction, just that steady, locked-in stare she gets when she's refocusing. That composure is part of her appeal. She let the referees handle it, or at least trusted they would. The problem is, in that moment, they didn't. And when a player of her profile doesn't get that instant protection, the game's temperature changes fast. That unspoken, next one's going to be harder energy started to creep in. You see it in all sports. When officials miss or delay addressing a dangerous foul, someone else on the floor eventually takes matters into their own hands. By the time Sheldon's flagrant 1 was formally on the books, the damage wasn't in the scoreline. It was in how both benches now understood the physical limits might be looser than usual. The Fever kept glancing at the officials after whistles, and every possession had an extra edge. That eye poke stuck in everyone's mind, and it felt like the next big collision was only a matter of time. The moment came in the third quarter after Fever guard Caitlin Clark was poked in the eye by Sun guard J.C. Sheldon. While Sheldon was playing defense, this led to a brief scuffle between Clark and Sheldon. Actually, it led to J.C. just kept running up on. I watched the video again. I was like, why is she doing that? Clark is obviously trying to get some space away from her, and she made it worse, which prompted Connecticut veteran Marina Mabrey to come up and shove Clark to the ground. Is that what we're calling it? Because it wasn't a shove. It was, I'm going to drive my entire body into your body. That's what that was, and that's exactly what happened. The shove that flooded timelines didn't come out of the blue. It came after several minutes of simmering tension the early non-whistle had allowed to build. So why, with that flagrant already recorded, did things still spiral? And why did Marina Mabrey decide she had to step in? Marina Mabrey's response came fast, and she's sticking to one explanation. She was protecting her teammate. That's her main defense. But when you slow down the sequence, the claim doesn't quite match what actually happened on the court. After the eye poke incident, Clark gave Sheldon a brief shove during a dead ball. More of a frustrated knock it off than anything meant to cause real damage. Sheldon barely shifted her stance. She was upright, steady, in no danger of falling or being hit again. Within seconds, Mabrey arrived, not to stand between them or guide her teammate away, but to lower her shoulder and deliver a full-body shove that knocked Clark hard to the hardwood. And then Marina Mabrey comes out of nowhere and chocks her to the floor. Now let's watch this in slow motion. Here, J.C. Sheldon is guarding Caitlin, swipes her in the face. There's one, going for the ball, swipes her in the eyeball. Caitlin's gonna have to start wearing goggles, and then Caitlin pushes her off of her, like, why are you still in my face? Marina Mabrey, bad out of hell, chocks Caitlin Clark to the ground. This wasn't mid-possession contact or a fight for a loose ball. It happened after the initial contact, in that scuffle window where cooler heads usually step in. That context matters, because it makes the shove look less like split-second defense and more like a choice to escalate. Clark wasn't flopping. She froze, blinked a few times, got back up and kept playing. She didn't deserve that. Now after this, you guys, of course, the referees are going to review the play because that's a lot of contact going on right there. That's a lot of unnecessary contact. That's a lot of non-basketball contacts happening during this play, right? So the three referees that I like to say, they got them straight out of Sephora because I don't think these referees have ever refereed a professional basketball game in their life. They took these referees, they were at the monitor, they looked at it for, I'm not even exaggerating, you guys, like 15 minutes. 15 minutes they are watching this play over and over. Mabrey later told reporters she probably overreacted a little bit. That's a direct quote. But compare it to the replay. It shows her setting her feet, leaning in, and driving Clark to the floor. A little bit doesn't square with forcing someone sideways into the court so hard their legs fold beneath them. The announcers here are saying, of course, Marina Mabrey is going to get ejected because that was unwarranted. She literally came out of nowhere and chocked Caitlin Clark. There should be a flagrant one, of course, on J.C. Sheldon because she swiped her and hit her in the eyeball. Whether it is intentional or not, you can still have a flagrant foul called on you, whether you are trying to intentionally hurt somebody or not. But this is what they called, you guys. This is what they called. Caitlin Clark, Marina Mabrey, Tina Charles were assessed with technical fouls on Tuesday. Caitlin, Marina, and Tina Charles. Technical fouls. That's it. Technical fouls. That's it. And J.C. Sheldon was assessed with a flagrant 1 foul and no players were ejected. And you can see in her follow-up posture that Mabrey wasn't just passing through incidental space. Chin up, chest forward. A deliberate look at Clark as if to check that the shove registered. That's not proof of intent, but it fuels doubt about the protection line. Fans noticed instantly, with even neutral viewers calling it avoidable contact that crossed the line. Adding to that skepticism is the disparity in force. Clark's shove to Sheldon barely moved her. Mabrey's counter flattened Clark. That's not what people expect if the goal is a proportional response in a heated moment. It's why so much of the public reaction rejects the idea this was an instinctive accident. This not only incited several technical fouls, but it prompted fever enforcer Sophie Cunningham to essentially start a brawl by grabbing and throwing Sheldon down to the ground 1 quarter later. Mabrey gets honest 2 days after the shove. Heard around the women's basketball world, Mabrey was heard saying, quote, "Damned if I do, damned if I don't," when addressing a commentator on the Instagram live stream who called her out for shoving Clark. Sure, adrenaline can make athletes react quickly, but adrenaline also doesn't give you time to square up, stabilize your base, and commit to full contact. That sequence, caught clearly on camera, suggests deliberate engagement more than uncontrolled impulse. Moments like this don't happen in isolation. Once a line like that is crossed, it shifts the emotional current of the entire game. Every player on the floor recalibrates, consciously or not, how far physical play might go. What happens next depends on whether the officials clamp down decisively, or let the moment breathe and risk it snowballing. And on this night, how they handled that shove would tell the crowd, the benches, and everyone watching exactly how much control they really had over the game. When Caitlin Clark hit the floor after Mabrey's shove, the expectation was clear. Stop the game, take decisive action, and send a message that the situation was under control. Instead, whistles blew, tempers flared, and the energy in the arena shifted fast. Players shouted from across the court, benches inched forward, and fans rose to their feet, sensing the temperature rising. But the next thing that happened wasn't a hard reset, it was business as usual. The refs huddled briefly and handed out technical fouls to Clark, Mabrey, and Tina Charles. Sheldon's earlier eye poke was reviewed and upgraded to a flagrant one. That was it. No ejections in the moment, no removal of the player who had just put Clark on the floor. Crew chief Ashley Gloss explained afterward that, in their view, Mabrey's contact did not rise to the level of an ejection, based on the force and context as they saw it live. That was the official rationale, before the league later decided otherwise. When the officials don't get control of the ballgame, when they allow that stuff to happen, and it's been happening all season long. All season long, it's not just this game, it's been happening all season long. This is what happens, right? This is what happens. You've got competitive women who are the best in the world at what they do, right? And when you allow them to play physical and you allow these things to happen, they're going to compete. And they're going to have their teammates' backs. It's exactly what you expect, right? Out of fierce competition. So, I started talking to the officials in the first quarter. And we knew this was going to happen. You could tell it was going to happen. So, they got to get control of it. They got to be better. Fever coach Stephanie White didn't hide her frustration in post-game comments, pointing out that the crew never got control of the contest. And the fourth quarter backed her up. Sophie Cunningham, normally among the most composed veterans, committed a hard, retaliatory foul that was later reviewed, upgraded to a flagrant 2, and got her ejected. In the chaos that followed, J.C. Sheldon and Lindsay Allen were also ejected. The powder had been lit earlier, and by then, everything felt combustible. Sophie commits a hard foul on J.C. Sheldon again. As J.C. Sheldon is going up for a layup, Sophie bear hugs her and takes her to the ground. What I will say is Sophie did not grab her and throw her to the ground. She didn't body slam her. She didn't do anything, in my personal opinion. Maybe I'm biased here, but I'm going to give you guys my straight up honest opinion on this. She bear hugged her, took her to the ground. Yes, it was intentional. Because the in-game call didn't eject Mabrey, the game kept escalating. And that's exactly what happened with Cunningham's flagrant 2. If you've watched enough high-contact sports, you've seen the pattern. Hockey fights, when refs let them play too long. Benches clearing brawls in baseball after an intentional beanball. Basketball games where one unpunished hit leads directly to another. Without intervention, the players start setting their own lines. For Fever fans, the frustration had another layer beyond this single night. Clark had already endured multiple games with borderline hits and little visible protection. This one was national TV, full house, every angle caught by cameras, and still, decisive action didn't come until well after she'd been helped off the floor. By the time the final buzzer sounded, the box score felt secondary to the reality that the game's emotional boil had never been cooled. The breakdown didn't happen all at once. It built in stages, with that first major flashpoint left underpunished and tension compounding from there. After a night where tensions never cooled, the league's post-game paperwork told a different story than what fans heard during play. Mabrey had been hit with a technical foul in-game. By the next day, the WNBA's official game report quietly listed it as a flagrant 2. Contact both unnecessary and excessive. A call that carries an automatic ejection if made on the spot. The shift didn't rewrite the final score, but it did rewrite the official record. In practice, this wasn't the league reversing a ref's judgment mid-game. It was them acknowledging, after review and in the glare of media and fan reaction, that Mabrey's hit met the criteria for the harsher penalty. That's why so many people called it a U-turn. In the moment, she kept playing. On paper, 24 hours later, she was classified as having committed an ejectable offense. From a safety standpoint, the timing is where frustration builds. A next-day correction doesn't prevent the hit, nor does it change the fact Clark played significant minutes alongside the player who delivered it. The league may argue this is standard review procedure, but optics matter. Fans saw a physical flashpoint go under-penalized live, then watched the league concede its severity only after the footage looped on every highlight show. That's what makes this more than just one foul. It plugs directly into a broader narrative about whether the league is willing or able to protect the player driving record attendance and TV ratings. This isn't about claiming a government investigation is underway. There's no public record of that. But once mainstream outlets connect Clark's name to discussions about workplace treatment, and fans start noticing patterns in how her games are officiated, you invite comparisons to corporate environments where repeated rough treatment, if ignored, becomes a liability. Hostile environment claims in sports still come down to the same core questions. Was the workplace safe, and did leadership act in a timely way to keep it that way? In that light, Mabrey's post-game comments hit differently. At first she leaned on the protecting my teammate explanation. Then, after a day of headlines, she added she probably overreacted a little bit, and even framed it as a damned if I do, damned if I don't scenario. There's no way to know her intent, but the sequence of statements makes it plausible this was as much about managing the story after it took off as it was about walking through her thought process. If there's growing scrutiny on whether Clark is being targeted, it's smart PR for any player involved in an incident with her to position themselves as acting out of loyalty, not aggression. For Clark's supporters, that's part of why this upgrade feels hollow. It proves the review process works on paper, but it doesn't guarantee she'll get that standard in real time when it can actually prevent further escalation. And that leaves one uncomfortable question hanging. If the league only corrects the call after the cameras and the crowd react, can fans trust that the refs will protect Clark in the moments that matter most? And what does that mean for 2025? Caitlin Clark and the Fever didn't just absorb the hits that night, they responded on the court. Even with the league stepping in only after review, they kept competing, stayed composed, and earned a resounding win. Sophie Cunningham, Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell, Lexi Hull, and Natasha Howard all stood tall alongside Clark,